You sit at a wooden desk. You stare at a blackboard. For over a decade of your early life, you are forced to sit quietly in artificial rooms, memorizing disconnected data to pass arbitrary tests. It feels incredibly isolating. Why does your brain reject this environment? Your ancestors did not learn this way. But the real answer is far stranger than just spending more time outside. If you were a young boy in the traditional Naga society of northeast India, your school was not a classroom. It was a fortress. It was an armory. It was a giant, terrifying wooden hut filled with weapons, ancient songs, and the looming threat of nighttime raids. This institution was called the Morung. It was the central socio-cultural and defensive pillar of traditional Naga society. You did not go there to study, you went there to survive. What happens to a human mind when education is a matter of life and death? The Assamese word Morung is just a generic label. Each Naga tribe held a deeply sacred indigenous name for this portal of adulthood. If you belonged to the out tribe, you entered the Arjur. If you were Lota, you survived the Champo. The Angami called it Kichuki. The Chang knew it as Sochum, the Pom as Laipang, and the Chakesang as Chetiche. Different names echoed across the mountains. Different dialects shaped the ancient chants, yet the core function remained exactly the same across the rugged terrain. The Morung was a bachelor's dormitory that completely severed your childhood ties with your parents. You moved out of your family home. You moved into the heart of the village. Why was this violent separation necessary? Your brain is wired to seek comfort from your parents. Comfort breeds complacency. Complacency in the ancient Naga hills meant absolute death. The elders knew that to forge an unbreakable human, they had to break the boy first. Think about the exact moment you are taken from your mother's heart. You are barely 8 years old. You are stripped of the warmth of the family fire. You are thrust into a chaotic, loud, and unforgiving space filled with older, hardened adolescents. This psychological shock is completely intentional. It creates a blank mental slate. The elders then write the unbreakable code of the tribe onto this blank slate. Picture the structure looming at the edge of the village. It is massive. It dwarfs every other building in the community. It stretches up to 50 feet long and 20 feet wide. A soaring front gable pierces the sky, casting a long dark shadow over the dirt pathway. It is strategically built on the highest vantage point or directly at the village entrance. It is designed to see everything. Elaborate and intimidating carvings cover the massive wooden front pillars and weatherboards. You see deep, sharp etchings of hornbills. You trace the curves of mitoon heads. You stare into the eyes of painted tigers, snakes, and human figures. These are not just decorations, they are coded signals of martial prowess and raw village strength. They tell approaching strangers exactly how dangerous the men inside truly are. When the sun sets, the Morung transforms. It becomes a strict military academy. It operates as the village guardhouse and central armory. All the weapons of your people are stored right where you sleep. Young men like you do not get to experience a peaceful 8 hours of rest. You sleep with one eye open. You maintain a constant standing defense force against enemy village or wild animal attacks. The dark night is full of real, lethal threats. You are the only line of defense between an invading headhunter and your sleeping family. British anthropologist J.P. Mills studied the Lota and Au Nagas extensively in the early 20th century. He documented how this constant state of vigilance forged an impenetrable psychological armor in the youth, binding them together through the shared trauma of nocturnal terror. You learn to suppress individual fear. You learn to operate as a single lethal organism. When morning finally breaks, the military academy becomes a university. But there are no textbooks here. Indigenous education flows entirely through oral tradition and intense physical labor. Village elders step into the Morung to transmit history. They do not lecture, They tell stories, sing ancient folk songs, and share folklore that encodes the ethical values of the tribe. You listen in absolute silence. You absorb the moral codes through rhythm and repetition. Then the physical work begins. You must master the vocational arts of your people. You learn intricate wood carving to maintain the morung itself. You weave complex basketry. You study advanced agricultural techniques to terrace the steep mountain slopes. You learn the precise art of forging iron into lethal tools and hunting weapons. Your hands are always moving. Your brain is always engaged in deep, purposeful action. Life inside this dormitory enforces a brutal but necessary discipline. The hierarchy is absolute. You must show unquestioning obedience to the older boys and the village elders. You learn the dignity of severe, exhausting labor. You are stripped of any childish entitlement. Austrian anthropologist Christoph von Fürer-Haimendorf lived among the Cognac Nagas and observed this exact societal mechanism. He noted that the Morung completely eradicated individualism in favor of total communal integration, creating a society where personal ego was considered a dangerous liability. You do not matter as an individual. Your value is defined entirely by your contribution to the group. This sounds oppressive to a modern mind, yet it creates a society with zero homelessness, zero isolation, and zero existential crisis. You always knew exactly who had your back. At the very center of this existence lies a colossal object of immense power. It is the lock drum. It is a gigantic wooden gong, hollowed out of a single massive tree trunk. Dragging this log from the forest into the village is a monumental, sacred event that requires the raw muscle of every man. It is housed proudly inside or directly adjacent to the morung. It is not just a musical instrument, it is the voice of the village itself. It communicates across incredibly long distances. Different rhythms announce the start of joyous festivals. Frantic, violent beats warns of approaching enemies or raging fires. British anthropologist Verrier Elwin was fascinated by the tribal cultures of northeast India and highlighted how these drums possessed their own living spirits, serving as the literal heartbeat of the village. The Morung is also the ultimate socio-political hub. It is the absolute center of power. Important village council meetings take place in its shadows. Complex disputes over land or blood are resolved on its steps. When diplomacy fails, declarations of war are roared from its porch. When the harvest is rich, the planning of major festivals begin here. You grow up watching the elders debate, strategize, and lead. You witness the heavy burden of leadership every single day. You do not read about politics. You watch it happen in real time, surrounded by the weapons that will enforce those decisions. You realize that actions have immediate, deadly consequences. This is how character is built. It is forged in the fires of extreme accountability. This ancient system could not survive the collision with the outside world. The traditional Morung system underwent a rapid, devastating structural decline during the late 19th and early 20th century. The outside world arrived with completely different ideas about what a human mind should be. The advent of modern formal education physically replaced the indigenous teaching role of the Morung. You were told to leave the armory and sit in a classroom. Concurrently, the spread of new religion discouraged the animistic rituals and ancestral chants that echoed in the dormitories. Finally, the British colonial administration enforced a strict ban on traditional headhunting. The primary need for a standing, hyper-vigilant village guard vanished overnight. The weapons gathered dust. The log drums grew quiet. Today, the physical bachelor dormitories are no longer required for daily habitation or nightly defense. The sprawling wooden fortresses are mostly silent. Yet the core values engineered inside those walls remains deeply, stubbornly influential in the Naga society. The architectural brilliance and raw communal spirits are resurrected and heavily featured during massive cultural events like the Hornbill Festival. The ancestral legacy is put on display for the world to see, but it is more than just a museum exhibit. The Morung concept has begun to slowly integrate into modern state education. Educators are realizing that something vital was lost when the wooden walls fell. They are trying to teach traditional crafts, ancient folk tales, and practical life skills to contemporary students. You need a community. You need a shared struggle. To truly understand the power of the Morung, you must look at what happens when it disappears. When a young mind is placed in a sterile room, fed abstract information, and stripped of physical danger, it atrophies. Modern society is currently facing a catastrophic epidemic of youth anxiety, depression, and profound lack of purpose. Your brain evolved to bond with a small tribe under the tread of a nighttime jungle. It evolved to master complex physical tasks with your hands. It evolved to listen to the rhythmic songs of your elders by a fire. When you remove all those evolutionary inputs, the system crashes. You are left with a nervous system that is constantly scanning for a threat that does not exist. You are left with hands that only know how to swipe on your phone. The Morung did not just protect the village from invaders, it protected human minds from its own worst tendencies. It forced you to be useful. What is the psychological cost of feeling utterly useless? The village elders knew that character could not be taught through passive listening. It had to be etched into the muscle through shared suffering. When you spend all day carving a massive weatherboard with your peers, you learn patience. When you stood guard at 3 in the morning, listening to the rustle of the thick jungle foliage, you learned absolute emotional control. When you shared a meager ration of food with the boys who would literally take a spear for you, you learned empathy. This is the Morung effect. It is the radical idea that hardship and heavy responsibilities are not a thing to be protected from. They are the exact raw material required to build an unbreakable human being. You are capable of so much more than just sitting quietly. You are built to survive the dark. You are built to protect the tribe. Yet you sit at a wooden desk. If you enjoyed this video, then please drop a like and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you on the next one.